Good evening, all, and welcome to Kalbardr's Corner for this fourth episode of Consort Conversations. I am Lord Kalbardr, Companion Meridian Cross, Companion Argent Comet, Companion Compostella, and Reaper, coming to you live currently from the Shire of Telmere, somewhere in the middle of the beautiful kingdom of Meridies. Now, for this series, you will recognize my co-host, possibly from a late night here at the Corner Tavern, or 3 times a Queen of Artemisia, and of course has served as a consort to the Duke Sean for 17 years now. I would like to once again welcome Her Grace, Duchess Qamar al-Nisa. Good evening, Your Grace.
Good evening, Cal. Thank you. He pretty much gave my info, but I am super excited to have Tullia here with us this evening to discuss if we should say yes when talking about consorting. And I am going to let her kind of give us an introduction into herself and her experience. Go ahead, Tullia.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Tullia Allori. I am a Laurel and a court baroness from the West Kingdom. I've been in the SCA for 28 years, I think. And I would get a bit of a feedback on your end, because I'm getting a little bit of cool. So I've been in the SCA for 28 years, well over half of my life at this point, and I was laureled in 2012 for historical costume, specifically Elizabethan costume, and I have the consorting journey is a new development in my life. I basically was asked the first time at my laureling vigil by one high-profile duke. That ended up not working out, and then the next offer I got was in 2015, and it came from my best friend, Duke Thorfinn, and I accepted that offer. So learning about how to consort was a completely new experience. Actually, consorting was a completely new experience, and consorting for a high-profile fighter was completely unprepared for any of that. So it's been quite a learning process for about the last 6 years, and there's been ups and downs, but I want to, talk about it with you guys and maybe share some stuff and help other people.
Yeah, I think that's a great intro for the. So I've heard you talk a lot. And when we first started talking about the show, you were on the initial short list of people we wanted to hear from because, and I remember the very first day we were discussing this, you're like, wow, I have a lot of really bad things to say about being a consort. I don't need to be on the show. I was like, no, actually, you need to be. Exactly. We need to hear all the dirt. We need to hear
you caught me at a really weird, like that moment when I got that text message. Right. I went from, oh my God, I'm so flattered, to why do they want me? Because there's just like, all the wonderful people that were on that chat list initially that you guys have reached out to were all countesses and duchesses or reigning princesses. And then there was me, and I'm like, wow, oh God, because there's a lot of complicated things that went into my experience. And but now I've talked a lot about it with other people, and I've learned that like those things actually aren't that uncommon. They're just not super talked about. So let's get that stuff out in the open. And I'm willing. I'm an open book. I'm willing to answer any question, even the hard ones. So hit me.
Yeah. So on that note, for those watching, I posted in the chat here, but also if you have questions for us, please just drop them in the comments. Include your SCA name and title, and we will work them in as is appropriate. And if it's something that's not really appropriate for this topic, we'll put it on the list to include in a future show or to add an episode or two on. So we have a couple things we're looking at to extend the list out for. So please drop those in there, and we will address them as we can. So
yes,
right. Nisa. So the question tonight is: should I say yes? What's your so for you? What does that mean? What are you looking for tonight?
So, of course, there's all different angles you can come from. There's the simple. I say simple, but there's the beginning fighter that's looking for his inspiration to say yes so he can carry her favor, right? So that would be a fairly basic, whether it's heavier rapier or whatever. That's a pretty basic concept of consorting. And I think I want to say, as long as you like that person and you trust them and that they'll hold your honor appropriately to your standards, go ahead and say yes. I think this evening is going to be a little more about tournament, being a consort if they're entering a tournament where there's a job attached. And that definitely throws in some more considerations, because when you start talking jobs, there's a whole lot more that goes into being a consort, whether it's communication or how you're going to back up that person, or how you work together. So that's kind of a little more about what this evening is going to be, I think, a little more focused on.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
All right, so Tullia, I think let's start with some details about you and your stuff with the times you've been a consort, and sort of, I think, the why you said yes, or maybe some reasons why you were like, I don't know. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, a funny story is that I was asked before Thorfinn. It was Duke Titus of blessed memory, skipped the line in my Laurel Vigil, and sat down across from me and was like, I think you'd make an awesome queen. I'd love to fight for you, and you're such a good friend, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, that's a lot to take in right now out of the blue, you know? So I told him, let's talk about this tomorrow when we're sober. And we'll have a conversation about this and talk through it. And we actually did. We followed up the next day, and I agreed. I actually agreed to do it because I really like Titus. I thought he was a fun person to be around, and yeah, it seemed like an easy thing to say yes to in that moment of, our values kind of were aligning. Like, we had similar beliefs about how things should go. And I'd worked with him before on his courts in previous reigns. And then, yeah, it was literally like a no strings attached, just let's be friends. Let's see where this goes. And I was like, yeah, okay, I could totally do that. One thing led to another, though, and he went off and within like a month of that, and went on this great, like, profound journey of life, and ended up on the East Coast. So he never actually fought for me in a tournament, but I sent him off with love because that's what he needed, and he found himself, and he had a great time. But it wasn't until like a couple of years later, kind of in a similar situation where it was me and my good friend Thorfinn. We're hanging out. We're talking about, just life. And he had just come off of a reign, and I was his head of court for that reign. So we had worked together pretty closely, and we kind of felt like we were becoming better friends than we were before. And through the kind of the process of that reign, we basically became, like I said, war buddies. Like, I referred to us as being war buddies. Like, we got through it. We did it. And we're standing around at the meadery where he used to work. And one night, and he's given me, sizer after sizer after sizer. And I suddenly I think he brought it up. He said, wouldn't it be really funny if I fought for you and I made you queen? And I was like, that's dumb. Nobody would do that. And we laughed about it, and we started laughing, and then kind of stopped laughing, and then started thinking about it. And we quickly, like within a few minutes, we're like, actually, that could be a lot of fun. That could be something that, see what happens. Like, again, we clicked really well. In fact, we clicked better, Thorfinn and I than Titus and I did. So I felt really good about it from just immediately from the start. But one of the things that he came right out and he said is like, I don't think we should let anybody know right now, because it was probably about a month before the Fall Crown. And he said, I don't think we should let anyone know that I'm fighting for you, because there's going to be drama. I promise you there will be drama if I come right out now and people, know that you're going to be my consort. So that was like my first introduction to, congratulations, you're a consort. Here's a heap of drama. And I thought, like, oh, okay, but he had this whole explanation that ever since he was before he was even knighted, but specifically after he was knighted, people just really, really cared about who he was fighting for, and cared in a very unhealthy way about who that person was. And so his consorts, he'd said in the past, had gotten a lot of very negative attention right out of the gate. And I kind of, having stood on the sidelines and having watched some of this actually happening, understood that it was because Thorfinn could win. So anybody he was fighting for could be the next queen. And so people, of course, if they're like, they don't like the consort, or don't think the consort is worthy, there's all this baggage that goes with that. And so he asked early on that, like, let's just not talk about it. Let's just keep it a surprise. We'll show up the day of, we'll turn in our cards, and that's when everyone will know, when we go through invocation, that I'm fighting for you. And that's what happened. And it was really an interesting situation, because people were like, really? You? So he's fighting for you. And then some were very positive about it. Some were like, immediately like, oh, you'll be a great queen, which, again, a lot of baggage there too. Right. And then others, though, were, would sidle up and kind of be like, so how long have you and Thorfinn been,
And all kinds of assumptions made at that point as well, right?
Yeah. And that was some of those things that, like, at the time, Thorfinn and I were not a couple. We are a couple now, but at the time he was dating somebody, I was dating somebody. We were just friends. Like, I swear to God, just friends. And I had like no romantic attachment whatsoever. We were just buddies. And so people, though, didn't just immediately went to that, like just immediately decided that there was had to be a sexual component to it. Whether in jest, because some I think were kind of kidding, but others, I think they really were serious. They were just kind of like, Tullia and Thorfinn. And so I understood kind of right away, or very quickly, that there was a lot of this negative attention that was liable to get thrown around at somebody who was consorting for somebody who could be king. So yeah,
so let's break that down, because I think that's our first reason why you should consider it is depends on who the fighter is, right? So there's two halves of that.
Yeah.
In your case, you had the high profile. He could actually legit win this, right? I mean, let me be honest. Anybody has a good day. Anybody can win it. That's the thing about Crown List. But you have the people like Thorfinn who are significantly more likely than Joe Schmo, first time fighter, right? So you have that aspect. Okay, that's a thing to consider when you're saying yes to the fighter. But you also have this person comes with their own baggage. So this is it's a relationship. It's not a sexual. It's not a romantic. It's not whatever. It's still a relationship, and relationships come with baggage. So in your case, Thorfinn came with 4, 5, 17 reigns worth of baggage.
7 actually. Well, let's see. He's done 6 reigns total, I think, but 4 kingdom reigns, 2 principality reigns.
So multiple kingdoms worth, or multiple areas worth of baggage, multiple relationships baggage. That's a lot to take in.
There's a lot of baggage.
I have to tell you, Sean definitely has a saying, and it is, kingdoms tremble when dukes get new girlfriends. And I think that's true of any crown contender, because there's always opinions about that person, whether it's just because they don't know, maybe it's because of an encounter they have had, maybe it's just hearsay that they've heard, or maybe it's assumptions that they're making, but there's always opinions on that. And we all know, and we've all seen crowns do it. No matter what a crown does, someone's going to be happy with that decision, and somebody's not going to be happy with that decision.
Right.
And who usually gets
part of the baggage that comes with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's usually the blame. I've seen this constantly. Like, usually the blame lands on the queen, lands on now that we're moving into an era where there's going to be more same-sex monarchs. I hope it doesn't continue that way, but I have seen it in the same-sex reigns that I've seen at the principality level. It's the consort that gets the baggage, that gets the dumped on. I don't know why that is. I really don't know why that is, but it's happened, and it happened to me. Well, I haven't reigned yet, but the preamble to that, everybody really, really interested in you.
I was just talking to someone else, and this is their first time. This upcoming crown that they have for their kingdom will be their first time that a crown contender is fighting for them, and they're starting to see some of that pushback of even though that she is actually in a relationship, which I don't think should make a difference, but it's the people are sucking up because they think she's gonna be someone, or they're like, what are you up to? Like, for some reason, it's really hard for people to just have their being in between. So,
yeah, it is. It's a really weird place to be. I don't know. I lost my train of thought because actually that was a really good point, and I'm not going to belabor that anymore. But I was noticing some of the comments that were coming up, actually. The one that you just put up from Catherine and Michelle, people assume that the consort is easier to talk to or easier to work with. Yeah, probably. I do think that there's some sort of accessibility there that people perceive as an easier access point. Yeah.
And then the counterpoint on that, of course, hi Bree, is also they think the consort's easier to manipulate.
Bingo.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know to avoid that concept, at least to not let it happen, is like Sean and I talked ahead of time. Neither one of us make a decision without the other.
Right.
With very, very few exceptions. And if you're going to back one of us into a corner, your answer is no.
Right. Yeah.
It's that simple. If you're going to demand an answer right now, it's no.
Yeah, that is, I think, one of those things that, again, if you're going to talk about should I say yes, what is your communication style with your fighter? Can you guys communicate? Can you guys get on the same page? Can you guys have a conversation about a difficult topic? And you can disagree about it, but can you agree that in that moment you can say to somebody, we will get back to you with an answer, and then have the argument away from everybody, resolve it, and come back unified? Because that's something that, you do have to.
And that's the thing. You have to come back unified, and you have to be you and your consort have to be people that can do that.
Yeah.
That has to be consideration.
It also is hard to know in the moment when you're actually, presented with that. And I haven't been in that situation personally, but I have seen it happen. Where, I work very closely with crowns, and I see those moments of, the spine stiffening and the eyes get a little big. And I think you go into this thinking, no, we're always going to be in perfect accord with one another. We're always going to agree on everything. And then something happens and you realize you disagree, or you have a different viewpoint, and arguments are going to happen. And I've seen it. I've seen it happen. It's going to happen.
Sean and I were just talking the other day about a subject that has come up with the pandemic and everything. And I won't go into details and bore everybody with it. But the point being that he and I need to talk about that subject further, because it's probably going to come up. And we need to talk about it further to see if we really are in alignment, or if we just need to come to an agreement.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, another comment, though, from Lady Sharon, she was saying, what kind of drama comes when the consort isn't a significant other? I think that's an interesting one, because that was something that I experienced early on. I referenced it a little bit where I said, I got some very arch comments about, whether or not we were actually sleeping together, or, somebody once flat out asked me what my agenda was. Oh, Thorfinn's fighting for you, so what's your agenda? And I'm agenda.
Because he's a ringer. It's so if you had something to do, you go find somebody like Thorfinn to make it happen.
I guess, but that was so not on my radar at all in that moment. Especially, we hadn't even gone, like, I think we hadn't even done like the first bout in the tournament or something. And that was like one of those questions that suddenly got lobbed at me. And I was like, have a good time. That's my agenda. I want to have fun. So yeah, the challenges or drama, people are just going to assume you guys are sleeping together. Like, I think that's just an automatic thing because we have this ridiculous concept in the SCA that you're fighting for your romantic partner. That's it. And even though there are other varieties of relationships that exist in the consort spectrum, the default everyone goes to, especially if you are, male and female or male presenting and female presenting, is you must be sleeping together. And that was, I kind of expected that one, actually. That one was not such a huge shock. It was a little shocking when somebody flat out asked how long we had been sleeping together. But I figured that would be somebody's assumption somewhere. The only thing I was going to do was just be like, no, I'm in a relationship with this person. He's in a relationship with that person. We are just friends. And that's, you can believe that if you want or not. Now,
so
I was
just going to say, I think bringing it back to, should I say yes, part of that would be, you need to just make sure, especially if you're in a relationship with someone else, that you've had those conversations with your SOs so that they too are aware, again, because all four of you need to come back with a united front.
Yes. And that was exactly a key thing.
And that's a conversation you need to have ahead of time because, yes, people will straight up ask you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're not going to be nice about it either. They're literally going to.
Unfortunately, no, not everybody will be nice.
Yeah.
And then the agenda thing, I think that sometimes they're personally asking you, like, what's your agenda as far as you're sleeping with him to become a duchess, right? Like, but there's also, just so people are aware, there is the agenda where sometimes you go into a crown. Like, Sean is fighting in this crown, okay? We're in. If he should be victorious, our agenda, if you want to put it that way, is to help stabilize the kingdom after a pandemic.
Right.
So we do have a basic general agenda, just because of where we are as a kingdom right now. But yeah, asking a consort what their agenda is as an individual, that's not cool.
Yeah, it was a little ick. But I was going to follow up about that comment or about the being friends or not being in a romantic relationship with the person fighting for you. Just ironically, when Thorfinn and I did get together years later, his relationship ended, my relationship ended. We were actually roommates at the time. And then suddenly, after about a year, we were like, hey. But when we came out as a couple, people were relieved. People were supportive. People were happy for us. The same people that I had gotten these weird, like, so what's going on comments were like, oh, thank God you guys are together. I was like, that was what? Why wasn't, like, why one reaction and then a wildly different reaction when, we finally became a couple? I still don't understand that. But, I was happy for the people's support. That was really important.
I think that if you're going to say yes, it has to be for you and your fighter. I think that you have to remember that it is, if you're a crown contender, yes, it will and may potentially affect the kingdom. But as far as you saying yes or no, that has to be for you and your fighter to decide. That is not something that people on the outside can decide for you, nor should they try, even though they will ignore them.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that
either way, yes or no.
Yeah, in that initial conversation that Thorfinn had with me about, people really care about who I'm fighting for, so, let's try and avoid any drama in the run-up. I think that was kind of what he was kind of getting at, which is, I want you to know up front that this is a thing, and it's been a thing for 20 years of my fighting career. It's happened to multiple consorts of mine, and I just need you to know that this is what is going to happen. Like, and he was right. He was literally like, here's the roadmap everybody's going to follow. And I thought that was, in retrospect, very self-aware of him, also aware of, how it would impact me, and was kind of, and he was very much like, are you sure you want to take this on? And my answer to him was, yeah, because I've been in the SCA for, at that point, I think it'd been like 22 years or something like that, over 20 years. And I already had a peerage. I already had a court barony. I already had the awards that probably any award that I could ever hope to get, I'd already gotten. And this wasn't something that I was going after as like a personal achievement. It was something that I just was like, well, this is a new experience and I just want to see where it goes. And so I was like, they're not going to take away anything from me. Like, they can't. I've already got I got what I came here to get. So what are they going to do? Take away my birthday? Take away my laurel? No, they can't. And just, if people being jerks about it, is that all that they're going to be? That's the only thing that I have to be worried about. Well, let them come at me. They know me. They've known me for over 20 years. So I'm not an unknown quantity. And I think that was something that helped me personally, was just remembering that, this is my family. They know me. I know them. And whatever weirdness happens out of it, it's not gonna end anything for me. It's, it's just part of the background noise. So,
well, and I would have to say, if you're in a position where somebody's asking you, and even if they're a newer fighter, if you're in it, because eventually it's okay to want to be queen. You kind of have to want to do the job, right? Like, don't covet it. And if you're doing it so that people will do stuff for you, or for more of those selfish reasons, and if that's where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, I think there has to be, maybe not.
Try to, to make sure there's a balance there somewhere for yourself, because you're going, if you end up being someone that's demanding, or if you come off entitled once you get that position or the job, you are going to burn bridges.
Oh yeah.
And so you really have to consider your own personality and how that's going to present. And it doesn't mean that you should say no if you think you're not going to get along with everyone. It just stay self-aware.
Also, I think surrounding yourself with people that can take you, yank you back down to earth is really helpful. Yeah. And that's something that, I would suggest any consort have, that at least one person that's not the fighter that you can go to, and you can say, like, I'm having this crazy or whatever is going on in the moment, especially during the tournament, because at least for me, that I am serene on the outside and internally screaming the entire time, because tournaments are stressful. Like, they're really stressful. And it's really helpful to have kind of at least one person who can walk up and be like, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? Even if
at all possible, have your people, like those people that know you well enough to be able to look at you and go, they are about to pass out.
Yeah. Here's a bag for you to hyperventilate into.
Yeah. Someone to walk up to you and say, breathe.
Yeah.
Or also someone to walk up to you and go, so I call bullshit. If it has to do with anything, like, you need your bullshit person, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have a very good bullshit
I think we all do. We all need that person that's like, I'm sorry, it's not those pants that make your ass look big, it's your ass.
That's right now.
So I think to sum that up is should I say yes? Well, do you have a support staff, right? So, when you think about the fighter and the consort as the end all be all of that decision, but it's not. You have to have okay, if we win, this tournament with a job, do I have the people around me to make this happen?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that's it. And even if you don't have it immediately, so like if I were to travel to and go fight in the West Crown, I wouldn't have the support staff there. Well, I do now. I wouldn't have had 2 years ago. I do now. I know people's. But you have to consider that. Do you have people there that can help you with that job if and you win?
Even if your fighter is say it's a champion tourney.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a job and your champion's going to be traveling with the crown, sorry, I saw Sean's comment. Even if your fighter is traveling with the crown, you need to be able to support them in whatever way looks good for your situation. So whether it's that you're going to be able to travel with them and back them up, or you're going to be staying local and continue playing local, or if you have children, being able to look after them, or if it's a friend, just being able to support them in whatever they need. It's just, it goes back to having all those silly conversations that you have to have in order for any relationship to work.
Right.
So, yeah. Yes, that one person that goes, "Gee, Your Majesty, I'm pretty sure that sounded really awesome in your head."
You see the words of wisdom from Duke Sean in the peanut gallery there. So, Tullia, I want to talk about something you said about Duke Titus. You made a really interesting point we sort of glossed over. Since a lot of when we talk about fighter consorts, we end up defaulting back to the pre-established relationship, whether it's a romantic or a friend. So with Duke Titus, you said where you guys were friends, you weren't necessarily close. It wasn't something you had considered before. So one of your first thoughts you said was that you had to think of are our core values aligned, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Talk through that some.
So to be perfectly honest, Titus at that time had come out of some problematic stuff. And one of the problematic things was he was reigning at the time that one of my fealty sisters was being considered for an R&D. Now, I'm not going to get into some deep Westy baggage, but the point is that was one of the very first considerations, was because within my fealty family, a lot of people thought Titus was a terrible person. Right. And so I always liked him. Now I've always been kind of the weird black sheep in this whole thing. I don't really somebody wants me to go one direction and march in line, and I'm always like, that's cool, I'm going to go over here and do my thing. So I got to know Titus during a period where there was a lot of emotional shit going on. So when he surprised me, he had just come out of a relationship that had just ended, and he was very heartbroken about it. And he came blazing into my vigil and took me completely off guard. And so I had all of these different experiences with him where I knew I liked him as a person. We were friends, we hung out, we had a good time, but I didn't really know how my fealty family was going to react. And B, how would that perception of what had gone down affect how people perceived me? And so that was one of those moments one of the very first moments where I had to reckon with all of that. And I had to do it very much on the spot. and just out of respect for him, I didn't know at that moment if I was going to say yes or no. All I knew was that I had to be in a place where I could actually internalize it, digest it, think about it, talk to some trusted friends about the implications of saying yes, and then come back and have a conversation with him that actually addressed some of those big issues that had happened during one of his reigns. And we ended up having a really, really good heart-to-heart about it the next day. And, and it was something that, because of that conversation, I felt better about, saying, sure, why not? I never went into it thinking that he would, that this would be a long-term thing. I figured he was kind of in a transitionary period in his life at the time. I very much understood that, and I figured eventually he's going to get in a relationship with somebody, and he's going to want to fight for that person, and that'll be fine. I'm kind of like this, if he wants to fight for me, just to fight, that's cool. And it just worked out that it didn't really happen that way, but but that was my understanding of how the dynamic was going to go. I think now in retrospect, having actually been actively fought for and actively much more involved. At the time, I wasn't as closely involved with other reigns as I am now, like helping run head of court, things like that, being on courts. I think going back to that me in 2012 and that moment, I may actually have said no. I may, me now, say no to that situation because there was just too many variables there, and I didn't know enough experience-wise to like say, is this really a good idea? Yeah, I'm buddies with this person and I have a good time with this person, but when the chips are down, when really hard stuff is going on, do I know that we are going to be a united front? And I didn't, and I can't say that I did or ever really felt that way with him. Now, that's not to say that, that he was bad or, anything like that, because he wasn't. He was great. And but it just didn't have that depth of connection and understanding that I ultimately realized is really integral to, especially when a high profile fighter is fighting for you, because it's a real thing. It can happen. So,
well, and I think that if you've said yes, you also have to remember that that's a conversation you can have every time, basically any time they fight for you and your honor, because you are at any point allowed to say, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore, or I'm just not comfortable doing this, or whatever your reasoning is. You are allowed to change your mind at any point in time and say, you know what, I can't do this. The fighter also is allowed at any point in time to say, I would hope they would say, I've been honored to carry your favor until this point, but now I'm going in a different direction. And that's something you also have to be aware of, is when you get into it, that's got to be part of the conversation. Are we talking this tournament? Or are we talking maybe at least a few tournaments out, right? Like, what is your thought process on this?
Right.
Right now, for Sean, it's the foreseeable future, right? Well, that's what we call it anyways. But there's times that it's just for a tournament, or hi Quinn, or it's
it's officially a YouTube show now. We have a pupper on the screen.
Yes. It's just for her tournament, or it's just for the day, or Quinn, seriously, you gotta get down, baby. I love you. No. She thinks she's a lapdog. So yeah, that's part of the conversation you have to have, and that's part of got to be part of your, and if they do things that you don't agree with, please speak up. Maybe not, like I've said this before, not in the middle of the tourney field. Okay, don't do that to anybody ever. Either side of that, but pull them aside. It can be that day, like it can be right after that fight. Just don't do it in the middle of everybody, but pull them aside and say, hey, this happened, I saw this, tell me what your take is on it, and I'll tell you what mine was. And you always have the right at any point in time to pull your favor.
True. Yeah, and that's a huge one, and one that actually I didn't really consider. I never had to consider it with Thorfinn. Like, it never was an.
Yet, just saying.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, he could. Yeah, I don't know, one too many headshots and go completely wacky. But there is that though, that absolutely the consort holds the power to remove their favor and say, you know what, nope. And just try to be classy about it. Like Nisa said, don't do it in the middle of a tournament. That's not a good look. I mean, unless it's something really egregiously bad.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, right? But in general, don't.
Yeah, just try to be mature about it. It's a hard thing for me, because I I felt helpless. And that was the thing that another realization that I had after I said yes, was realizing how helpless I felt as a consort. Because what does the consort do? Inspiration. Like, what does that mean? I'm a person who overanalyzes everything, and immediately I'm like, what's inspiration mean? I don't even know this. Like, I can't even.
We talked for a whole hour. I don't think we ever came up with a good like concrete definition of it. Yeah,
well, that's true.
I recently came to this realization that I don't have a. I don't know. It's not like I'm not. Because I think Thorfinn thinks I'm inspiring, which is, if he thinks I'm inspiring, then awesome, But I don't have a concept for myself about what that means. And so what I ended up having to do was enter in this period of like deep reflection. And I had this moment of realizing that it was everything I did before we got to the tournament that was really what it was. That was really what the important work was. And what I considered the important work, not me standing at the edge of the tourney field and, as my Laurel said, stick your chest out and smile and be inspiring, like that. Thanks, Juana. But, she said that to make me laugh. But it was that kind of feeling of like, oh, I guess that's all I really have to do. But I wanted something more. And Thorfinn is a very, very self-sufficient fighter. Like, he's got his own water. He's got his own needs. He's got his system down. He puts the helmet on. He's the machine. Like, the machine takes over. And he just, goes out and slaughters people and then comes back until somebody else kills him. Like, that's how it works.
Sean's the same way. So yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not that I needed to be there to like pamper him or, massage his shoulders or anything, because he just doesn't, none of that exists. And when he's got the helmet on, none of that. So I realized, though, it took me a long time. In fact, very, very recently, I think I messaged you guys about it, where I was like, I had this epiphany, that it was all of the things that I did before we got to the tournament that was the actual inspiration, that was the actual active part, where it was the, making sure he eats well, making sure he gets something in his stomach because he can't eat right before a tournament, but he needs to eat something or else his blood sugar will crash. Like Sean.
That's what I rolled my eyes at, not you.
I've actually given him little hand massages and stuff in between rounds, but that's about it. I did it one time, actually, the last crown we fought in. I was giving him a little working on his sword hand a little, and somebody walked up and said, "Do you do that professionally, or are you just being nice to him?" And I'm like, yes, I'm just being nice to him. He was out there fighting. Like, what weird conversation. But yeah, like getting him to go to practices, encouraging engagement, like getting him so he gets online and talks about the stuff. Like, that's the stuff. And there's a lot of this background stuff where he's like, yeah, I want to do this thing, and then like goes off and forgets about it. And I'm always coming back and I'm like, so focus, like, you want to do the thing. These are the steps to do the thing. And then we get this thing and it happens. And
I think that's the part about consorting that it, like you said, that's the important stuff that other person can do. And that can be also supported by household and things like that. But definitely, like, yes, go fight, or
do the thing you love.
Go get online, or here's your notebook, or all of those kinds of things. Like, you just have to remember that it's all support. And I think that's one of the biggest things that consorts do is that support, whether it's the food, maybe for your fighter, it's having this beautiful Eric side pavilion set up and managed so that they know that their people are taken care of in the background, so that they can go fight and not worry about any of it. So it kind of depends on your person, your fighter. But there is a lot of that background stuff to consider. Are you an organized person? Are you, again, it goes back to what is your personality versus theirs, so that you guys can make these things happen.
So I think at that point, the question becomes, so if you're looking at, again, the should I say yes is, can I meet their needs? Right. So I think that's a
question. That's a huge question.
Oh yeah, right. But you look at the more concrete things, like can I do what they need from me on that day or the week before or week after, right? So look at that part first. And it doesn't have to be you. Yeah. So you have a household, you have friends, you have other people that can help with those things, but can you meet their needs physically around that tournament day? And then if this is a consort, like a crown reign, can I meet their needs as a consort, as a queen? And those have to have conversations happening ahead of time.
Yeah,
that's definitely a question to ask.
Yeah, and I did ask actually very early on. I asked Thorfinn, so what do you need me to do? And I was thinking like, well, I need to make sure somebody always has like a glass of water there for me while I'm fighting, so I can drink between rounds, or I need to have like this thing in this way. And he was just like, nothing. I'm good. Just do your thing, be there or not. Because he's had consorts in the past that were just off doing their thing. They wouldn't even like watch the tournament. They just suddenly, oh wait, I'm a royal, princess. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I better do the thing. Like, and they've been off the whole day, like whatever. And I felt very strongly, very, very strongly that I can't be that person. Like for myself, I need to be there. I need to be there to watch every fight. I need to be there to, be just eyes on what he's doing. Not that I can do anything about any of it, but because I needed that. And so I had to kind of figure out, well, if he doesn't really need me to be there, then what do I need for myself to be there? And that was a hard question to answer in itself as well. But yeah, fighting for people who are very self-sufficient. We don't have a household. We kind of just have this like giant amoeba-like family of friends. But they're very good about, cruising by and checking in and seeing if, I need anything. And that allows me to check in with Thorfinn and do you need anything? And sometimes he's like, between rounds, I want to go check out this merchant. And so he'll just like take his helmet off and he'll just go wander off and look at something and come back, I
have a personal goal of one day being as chill as Thorfinn is. That is a life goal of mine. He's just like, whatever.
Yeah.
So, a win crown? All right, that's cool. Like,
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there's
going back to if you should say yes, if you have a fighter that cannot have you by the side of the field, because there are fighters that just can't handle their consorts there, right?
Yeah.
But that's something that you need to be able to do to make your experience what it needs to be. Then that's a time that you have to stop and say, you know what? This is not for me. This fighter, their needs do not match up with my needs, and this is not going to go well. Yep. And sometimes that's why, those are the types of reasons why you would say this is not now, or not this fighter, or whatever the situation is.
Right.
And unfortunately, the answer is not always going to be yes.
Yeah.
And I fell into it, so my situation was a little bit different, because we were starting a relationship, and so he asked to fight for me outside of a crown tournament. That was a little bit different for me, and I kind of just learned as I went. And sometimes that's going to happen too, especially if you're consorting for a fighter who's at the beginning of their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, again, have to remember that you're allowed to say no halfway through that journey. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what, this for whatever reason's not working for me anymore.
Consent is
sexy. Great. We have this whole team thing going, and we're going to keep it going. So
yeah. And there's, part of this actually is this little ritual that Thorfinn does that I didn't even realize was a thing he did until a couple of tournaments in, and he walks up to me one, morning of the tournament, and he hands me my favor. And I'm like, what's this? This is yours. Why aren't you wearing it? And he's like, here. And I took me a minute to realize what he wanted from me was me to give it back and tie it on and say, yes, I approve. I am, go out, go do the thing and do it, with me as your inspiration. And so I realized, oh, that was another thing that I didn't realize was an actual thing until, see, I kind of lament sometimes that I didn't get to cut my teeth on as a consort on smaller, low stakes tournaments to kind of learn the culture, the patterns, the way things are done. I got thrown in the deep end of the pool, and I've just been like, what do I do the whole time? But yeah, that was part of that symbolism, though, of saying, like, you can take this back anytime. Do you want this back? I'm giving it back to you. And if you don't want it back, give it back to me. So yeah, that was a really interesting moment of,
yeah.
Okay.
And that's, I think, growing together is an advantage that some get and some don't.
Yeah.
And it's like any relationship. Every single one of them is a little bit different. So I think it always comes down to communication, honestly, and just the basic yes, no question is, can you communicate with each other and can you agree to disagree if need be?
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you can do those things in a civil, public, appropriate way, then you're good to go, right? I mean, if you're the type of people that tend to have screaming matches in the middle of the field, maybe you should reconsider whether you're going to have that person fight for you or not. Maybe having them fight for someone else would be better.
Yeah, and I think that takes a lot of like maturity, like to be able to say that.
It does. And I know that not all these things are easy, yes, no. There's a lot of gray in there.
It is.
For
and
sure.
It's very dependent on the situation, the moment in time, like all of these things. It's like a relationship. I mean, honestly, it is. It's a form of a relationship. And so you've got, you and in a lot of ways, let's be honest, it's actually very similar to a romantic relationship in a lot of ways. Even when you're not romantic with the person, there's a lot of that, mommy and daddy have to agree for, when we're disciplining the kids. Like we're all going to not, you have to find those match points with the person if it's going to be a good fit. And sometimes it's not. And being able to be mature about it and say like, well, maybe this isn't working out and we should let this.
And that kind of goes back to also I said yes. And now I'm like, oh no, you're allowed to say I changed my mind. It most potentially will suck for everybody, but sometimes that's just what needs to be done.
Exactly.
I think it's much better to suck for that little bit than to suck for 6 months to a year when you're reigning with them.
Yeah.
That's a lot more public suck too.
And this isn't a consort per se, but doing a baronial reign.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's 2 years
yes.
for most.
Or 10 if you're in certain kingdoms.
Yeah.
Right?
Commitment.
Like you need to know that you guys can work together.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. I just saw that pop up. They're allowed to say this isn't a good time for me. Yeah, absolutely. Going through a lot of stuff, and maybe the pressure of the tournament season is just one more thing that's just you can't do. Maybe you're not in a good financial spot, like those things.
Real life has to come first too.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Your real life job and your real life relationship. Well, I mean, our SE relationships are real too, but as far as like mostly like jobs or family obligations, school, things like that, you need to make sure that you can give. If you're out of spoons, it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
Right. So should I say yes? Well, it is saying yes going to negatively impact the rest of my life, the mundane side of my life, or other relationships in the SCA. So Tullia mentioned her her fealty family, or are they going to be upset about this? Is my peer going to be mad about this? Is my, my significant other going to be mad about this? Those are things to consider. I think those are really important questions to ask early on in that. And you don't have to. You may make somebody mad, and that may be an okay thing, but you need to at least consider that.
Yeah. Yep.
Lists of pros and cons. It's a thing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is something I think that. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so we're coming close to an hour. Have we missed anything? Is there anything? Any other reasons we should say no? So you can just come off the top of your head.
I think it's really flattering when you get asked. And so I honestly think it's hard for people in the moment to think about saying no, because, there's a lot more of, I felt like, he asked me to the prom,
Yeah.
Nobody else has asked me. If I want to go to the prom, then I better go with this guy. That's just a very, ridiculous analogy, but it was kind of what I felt in the moment, especially when Titus asked, and I was kind of like, wow, okay, the jock just asked the little nerd to the prom, like what? But me being the person I am, my initial reaction in those moments is to always say yes, or just feel like flattered and be like, oh my God, of course. And then in retrospect go, oh my God, that was a terrible decision. So taking a moment to step away from it, if you get blindsided with the question, is always something, take a breath, let me think about this. I need to go talk to some people. I need to really consider this, seriously, before I give an answer. And like in a relationship, if the person isn't willing to give you that space, then don't say yes, because that's going to be a red flag. If they respect you and are willing to let you consider and the risk and the possibility of rejection, then that's actually a good sign. And I would feel better about somebody that said, yeah, take some time to think about it and let me just go off and think about it, even if the answer is no. But yeah, in the moment, just not falling prey to that flattery trap of like, oh, they asked me, you like me,
I think I'd have to agree with that. Always be willing to take a minute and say, oh my gosh, I'm so flattered. Give me a minute to really think this through. But, I'm considering it. Just give me some time to think this through, or give me a week or a day, and then let's talk again.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
I
always say, I don't know what I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's really hard to ask those questions because you don't know what questions need to be asked. But if you take a step back for a minute, you can always come up with a few. And taking that minute to just think it through, it's just like, it's kind of the same, like you said, the prom or the wedding proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let that shock die off first.
Yeah.
Then think about it. Yeah.
I think my response to Titus, and when he just jumped the line at the vigil and just plopped himself down in front of me and said, how I'd love to fight for you. How do you want to be queen? And I was just like, wow, this is all so sudden. like that was my first thing out of my mouth. This is all so sudden. Hey, Titus, can I think about this while I'm not on vigil and we can come back and have a conversation later? And he's like, yeah, totally. And he had a couple of drinks at that point, so he was very happy, but he was just like, I just think it'd be fun and it'd be cool. And I'm like, yeah, it probably would be fun and cool, but I still have to think about it. He's like, yeah, you think about it. And he just bounced off again. And so, yeah, that was actually a good sign that he was totally fine with me thinking about it and having a harder conversation later about, all the other stuff that we went into. So, yeah.
And I think even a newer fighter, if you're asked by a newer fighter to consort for them, there's still considerations. Just have a conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a crown tourney, just find out what their needs are, what their expectations are, to make sure that you can meet theirs and they can meet yours.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do a little business, then we'll do a little wrap up here. So coming up in 2 weeks for our next episode of Consort Conversations, we'll be talking about what if we both fight? Wait, fighters can be consorts too?
Mind blown.
So that's going to change the conversation a little bit. You got, especially talking day of stuff, and you got two stick jocks out there trying to meet each other's needs. That's going to be a weird conversation. So Nisa, who's our guest for that? Do we have those confirmed yet?
No.
If not, that's okay. Okay, so guests to be coming soon. I know we had a couple on the list, so we're hopefully to have a pair of fighters for that one. So that'll be a fun conversation to see how that changes this dynamic a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So look for that in 2 weeks. If you're interested, the Kalbardr Korner watchers, or those who maybe are new to this channel but and have only watched this show, tune in on Wednesday for the thing that started Kalbardr Korner, which is What You Playing Wednesdays. We'll be discussing I'm not going to try to butcher this Japanese name, but it is a Japanese race game. And I'll be joined by a dear friend of mine, my first non-SCA guest, Scott Carroll, comedian, actor, writer, improv extraordinaire. It's going to be a funny show. The game may be terrible, but the guest will be hilarious. So tune in for that on Wednesday, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, or Central Daylight Time currently. And of course, if you want to support everything we're doing here on Kalbardr's Corner and KK Productions and the KK Productions family, look us up on Patreon, patreon.com/KK Productions. You've got 3 more days to get in on the second quarter rewards. Oh God, we have Doggo again.
She just loves you so hard.
Oh goodness.
Just love.
I got home like 20 minutes before we started the show from being gone for a few days, so she's a little needy.
Just so needy. So check that out, KK Productions. Also check us out on Redbubble. Redbubble.com / Redbubble, just search KK Productions. It doesn't have an address, and I don't like that about Redbubble, but search KK Productions, you can find our stuff there. And yeah, there's a Pride sticker out this month. We've got sheets. I've got to get the Consort Conversation sticker. I haven't done it yet. I've been away from my actual desk, so all of my stuff isn't there, so I'll get that done soon. So yeah. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you're not subscribed. We are like I think 2 short of 400, so let's get over that hump. And then we're on to 500, so that's the next goal. And we hit the 500 again, we will do another giveaway thing. So subscribe.
I just wanted to say a super huge thank you to Tullia for being our guest this evening.
Thank you.
I really wanted to hear her perspective on it because I knew that she'd had some. She's obviously had some positive experiences, but also some not so positive. And those are things that we need to talk about as well. So I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you. And thank you so much, both of you, for having me and letting me ramble a little bit about this. And I realized wrapping up, I forgot to tell you that one of the things that I came up with was a list of 3 things that every consort should know. 1 is how to blazon your device. 2 is a basic dance. And 3, I forget what 3 is, but I'll think of it eventually. Oh, how to sign your name. It was how to sign your name.
Oh,
so it was,
yes, that's a good one.
So those are like the 3 things, like learn your blazon, learn a simple dance, and learn how to sign your name. And, go forth and consort. Thank you again, though, you guys. This was great. Sure. Oh my God, your dog is killing me.
He's killing me too.
All right. So yeah, there you go. There's three bits of advice from Tullia, I think, and that's clever for a baronial reign or a crown reign. Those are 3 things.
Anything, really. Yeah. For anything. Yeah. Always, learn how to sign your name. Come on. And also, Black Nag is a very simple dance. If you don't like to dance, it's incredibly simple. So Black Nag, always go that route.
Don't do one of the complicated, like the Russian dances. Don't start there. It's bad news.
Yeah. No voltas. No. What are those? The kiki.
I would have to add be able to play a period game.
Oh, period. That is a really good one. You're right.
Something that you can sit down, talk to someone, get to know someone. It's a good way to do that.
Yep. Yeah.
If you want to learn period games, check out Kalbardr's Corner.
Yeah, that's right.
What You Playing Wednesdays? There's a whole list of them out there. Some of them including these 2 lovely ladies.
Yeah.
Some nice games out there. So
some really, really insane shows that we've done with you.
Which we're due for another one. I said I was going to do one quarterly, and we're due for another one. So
anytime, bring it.
I think we should let the crown tournaments settle out, and then we'll maybe get one after crowns. We'll see who's sitting on what thrones at that point, and then we'll maybe do a special royalty edition. Fingers crossed. Yeah. All right, gang. Thank you both for as always for doing this. The two of you are both amazing people, and I love having you on any show I'm on. And you stop it.
No, you.
No, you.
Well, you are amazing for hosting this, so thank you.
Thank you, Cal.
It's my pleasure, and of course, thank you to our viewers for tuning in every week. Continue to do that. Continue to watch all the other shows out there. We as creators need you to watch us. It feeds our little happy souls, and we're happy that we're doing this for you guys. So keep tuning in. But for today, this has been Tullia, Nisa, and Kal in Kalbardr's Corner. Night, everybody.